The doctor stopped explaining. That was how I knew the truth had already been decided. Machines breathed for me. Slowly. Mechanically. Every sound in that room said the same thing: this is the end. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. But I could still hear. That's when he leaned close enough for me to smell his cologne and whispered, "You deserve to know before you go." I tried to focus. My vision blurred. "What happened to your daughter," he continued calmly, "was not an accident. My heart reacted before my mind did. I planned it," he said, not proudly, not angrily. Just honestly. "And now, it's your turn." If I could scream, I would have. If I could ask why, I would have. But all I could do was listen. He sat beside my bed like a man waiting for a train he knew was coming. "You won't survive the night," he added softly. "So this truth dies with you. I want to ask you something. If you were certain this was your final moment, would you want the truth, or would you choose peace?" Because as the machine slowed, I realized something terrifying. He wasn't afraid of being heard. 6 months earlier, my life was loud in the most ordinary way. My daughter ran back into the house that morning, laughing, her bag half open. "Daddy, you forgot," she said. I smiled. "I love you." I didn't know those words would become a memory I'd repeat in my darkest nights. The phone rang that afternoon. One call. One sentence. "Sir, your daughter has been brought in." No explanation followed. Just silence where answers should have been. In the hospital waiting room, fear made time meaningless. That's when a man sat beside me.
Before we continue, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who has trusted this channel with their real-life stories. Your experiences don't just entertain, they teach, warn, and help others feel less alone. If you're watching and you have a life experience you think someone can learn from, feel free to share it with us. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if these stories move you in any way, please support the channel by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. It truly helps these voices reach more people.
"I understand what you're feeling," he said gently. Too gently. He knew my name before I told him. He spoke with confidence, not urgency. "I can help," he said. "You don't have to do this alone." And I believed him. Because when you're desperate, help feels like hope. Looking back now, I wonder. Have you ever trusted someone simply because you were too exhausted to question them? Doctors changed. Forms disappeared. Decisions were made quickly. "Sign here," they said. And I did. I didn't read the paper. I didn't know I had just opened a door I couldn't close. Because the moment that pen left the page, someone else began writing the rest of my life. They said the paperwork was routine. That word, routine, made everything sound harmless. I remember my hands shaking as the papers were placed in front of me. The letters blurred. My thoughts were louder than my eyes. The man stood close, just behind my shoulder. "You don't need to read all that," he said softly. "I've already explained it." I believed him because I wanted to believe someone was in control. I signed. The pen felt heavier than it should have. When I finished, he smiled, not wide, not proud. Just satisfied. After that, things changed. Doctors who had spoken confidently the day before suddenly needed more tests. Treatment plans shifted without explanation. When I asked questions, answers became careful, rehearsed. And the man. He never seemed confused. He always knew what was coming next. Always knew where to be. One night, as I watched my daughter sleep, a thought crossed my mind. What if the signature wasn't permission, but surrender? Tell me. Have you ever agreed to something because you were too tired to fight anymore? Because standing there, watching her chest rise and fall, I realized something that still haunts me. I didn't know what I had signed. But someone else clearly did. And whatever it was already working. My daughter stopped asking when she would go home. Instead, she asked quieter questions. One evening, she held my hand and said, "Daddy, am I getting better?" I smiled because that's what parents do when the truth feels dangerous. "Yes," I said. Even though my chest tightened as I spoke. That same night, the man returned. Unannounced. Unrushed. "She's strong," he said. "But recovery takes patience." I watched his face while he spoke. There was no uncertainty in it. No hope either. After he left, I noticed something unsettling. The nurses avoided my eyes the way people do when they know something you don't. The next morning, treatment changed again. No explanation. No discussion. That's when I finally asked the question that had been growing inside me. Why are things changing so much? I said. The doctor hesitated. The man answered instead. Because outcomes don't always follow expectations, he said calmly. That was the moment I understood something was wrong. If you've ever felt your instincts whisper while everyone else tells you to relax. You know how loud silence can become. Because in that moment, I realized. I wasn't being informed anymore. I was being managed. I began to notice a pattern I couldn't unsee. Every time I arrived early, he was already there. Every time I stayed late, he appeared before I left. He never asked permission to sit beside me. He never knocked. "You look exhausted," he said one afternoon, as if we were old friends. Grief does that. I watched the way nurses adjusted their tone when he spoke. Not respectful, careful. When I asked a question, they glanced at him first. When decisions were made, he nodded before anyone explained. I tried telling myself I was imagining things. Loss plays tricks on the mind. Everyone says that. But then I realized something unsettling. He never asked how my daughter was feeling. He spoke about progress. Outcomes. Timelines. Not once did he say her name. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you didn't notice when they stopped seeing you as human? That night, I stayed longer than usual. I watched my daughter sleep, counting her breaths. Behind me, his voice came softly. "You're doing the right thing," he said. I didn't ask how he knew what I was thinking. Because deep down, I was starting to understand. He wasn't here to comfort me. He was here to make sure I didn't change my mind. Hospitals are never truly silent. Until they are. That night, there were no hurried footsteps. No urgent voices. Just stillness. I noticed it before anyone said a word. The way the air felt heavier. The way the machine sounded, different. A nurse entered, checked the monitors, then left without meeting my eyes. Minutes passed. Then the man arrived. He stood at the foot of the bed, hands folded, calm as ever. "I told you recovery would be unpredictable," he said. Something inside me broke. "Why won't anyone explain what's happening?" I asked. He looked at me with something close to sympathy. Because explanations don't change outcomes. That was the first time he sounded honest. The doctor finally came in, spoke carefully, choosing words like stepping stones. I didn't hear most of it. All I saw was my daughter's hand lying still in mine. If you've ever felt time slow down because your heart refused to accept reality. You know that moment. The man leaned closer and whispered. Sometimes, letting go is the most responsible choice. Responsible. That word echoed louder than the machines. Because as the room stayed quiet, I realized something horrifying. This silence didn't surprise him at all. They didn't say it was my fault. They didn't have to. The way they spoke afterward was careful, almost gentle. As if they were handling something fragile. The man stayed close. Closer than before. I know this is hard, he said quietly. But you did everything you could. Then he paused. Just long enough. If only the decisions had been made sooner. That sentence settled inside me like a stone. No accusation. Just suggestion. I replayed every moment in my head. Every delay. Every question I didn't ask. Every paper I signed without reading. Grief does something dangerous, it starts negotiating with guilt. And guilt is always ready to answer. The doctor spoke in probabilities. The man spoke in certainty. Some outcomes are unavoidable, he told me. But responsibility still matters. Tell me, have you ever blamed yourself for something no one directly blamed you for? I stopped sleeping. I stopped questioning. When he said, "Trust me," I did. Because trusting him felt easier than trusting myself. That was the night I realized I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was being shaped. And the more I doubted myself, the more control he quietly gained. After that, I didn't argue. When the man suggested something, I agreed. When the doctor spoke, I waited for his reaction first. It wasn't obedience. It felt like relief. Thinking had become painful. Letting someone else decide felt like rest. "You're exhausted," he told me one morning. "Let us handle the details." And I let them. That's how dependency works, it doesn't announce itself. It arrives disguised as care. I noticed changes in myself. I stopped asking questions that once felt natural. I accepted explanations that didn't explain anything. The man started speaking for me. He understands, he told the staff. He knows this is necessary. I was standing right there. If you've ever allowed someone else to speak on your behalf because you didn't trust your own voice anymore, you understand that moment. Then came the headaches. Sharp at first. Then constant. Doctors called it stress. The man nodded, as if he expected that answer. That night, as pain blurred my thoughts, a frightening realization surfaced. While I was losing control of my body, someone else had already taken control of my life. The headaches stopped being occasional. They became expected. Every morning, pain greeted me before thought did. By afternoon, my hands shook when I tried to hold a cup. The doctors blamed stress. Grief affects the body, they said. The man didn't argue. He simply nodded, like someone watching a plan unfold on schedule. "You've been carrying too much," he told me. "Your body is asking you to rest." Rest felt impossible. Sleep brought memories. Waking brought guilt. Medication was adjusted without much explanation. When I asked questions, answers came slowly, carefully. And always, he was there. Have you ever noticed how certain people only appear when you're weakest? One evening, as dizziness forced me to sit, I saw something that chilled me. The man was speaking to a doctor in hushed tones. When they noticed me watching, they stopped. Later, I asked what they discussed. "Nothing you need to worry about," the doctor said. The man smiled. "Focus on healing," he added. But that night, as my vision blurred and my heart raced, one thought refused to leave. If this was just stress, why did it feel so precisely timed? Pain has a way of sharpening attention. Lying awake one night, unable to sleep, I replayed everything. Dates, conversations, signatures. Patterns began to surface. My treatments changed shortly after every long conversation with him. My medication increased whenever I asked too many questions. My strength faded as his confidence grew. That wasn't coincidence. It was rhythm. I asked for my medical file. The nurse hesitated. "I'll check," she said. She never returned. The next morning, the man brought the file himself. "You don't need to overwhelm yourself," he said, placing it just out of reach. Too much information can slow recovery. Have you ever been told that knowing less was for your own good? That's when I noticed something else. Entries written in handwriting that wasn't the doctor's. Changes approved without explanation. Decisions made without my consent. When I pointed it out, he placed a hand on my shoulder. "You trusted me once," he said calmly. "Trust me now." For the first time, fear replaced confusion. Because I realized something terrifying. Whatever was happening to me was happening with permission. And I didn't remember giving it. I stopped asking questions out loud. But inside, they were screaming. One afternoon, while the man was late, just once, I asked the doctor directly. "Who is approving these changes?" The doctor paused. "Not long. Just long enough." "Your advocate," he said carefully. Advocate. That word didn't feel right. Before I could ask more, the door opened. The man walked in, smiling like nothing had happened. "Everything all right?" he asked. The doctor nodded too quickly and left. Have you ever noticed how silence arrives the moment the wrong question is asked? I looked at him and said something I hadn't planned to say. "Why are you really here?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he straightened a document on the table. "Because you needed help," he replied. "And because I was willing to give it." That wasn't an answer. That night, pain tightened around my chest, and fear kept me awake. Not fear of dying. Fear of not knowing who was deciding when. As the machines hummed beside me, one thought repeated itself. If he truly worked for me, why did everyone else wait for his permission? Grief had been loud. Fear was quieter, but sharper. I began watching instead of reacting. I noticed how staff lowered their voices when he approached. How conversations stopped mid-sentence. One evening, I pretended to sleep. Through half-closed eyes, I watched him stand at my bedside, studying the monitors. Not worried. Not rushed. Satisfied. Have you ever realized too late that someone wasn't hoping you'd recover? My breathing slowed. The machines adjusted. He leaned closer and whispered. "You've been very cooperative." That word, cooperative, turned my fear into clarity. This wasn't care. It was management. Later, a nurse adjusted my medication and hesitated. "Are you sure?" she asked quietly. The man answered for me. Yes. I was still there. Still alive. But no one looked at me. If you've ever felt invisible in a room where your life was being discussed, you understand that moment. As the lights dimmed, my body weakened further. And one thought anchored itself in my mind. He wasn't waiting for my recovery. He was waiting for the right moment to stop pretending. My body began to fail in small, humiliating ways. First, it was my hands. Then my legs felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. Even breathing became something I had to remember to do. The doctor spoke in careful phrases. Complications. Unexpected reactions. The man listened without concern. "You've been through a lot," he said. "This is normal." Normal didn't feel like this. One night, pain climbed so high it blurred my vision. I tried to press the call button, but my fingers wouldn't respond. Panic rose faster than the machines beside me. He arrived before anyone else. "You don't need to strain yourself," he said softly. "Let your body rest." Rest sounded too much like surrender. Have you ever felt your own body turning into something unfamiliar, while everyone else insists it's fine? As medication flowed into my veins, clarity came in sharp flashes. Every decline followed a conversation with him. Every adjustment followed his approval. This wasn't chaos. It was sequence. That night, as darkness pressed in, I understood something terrifying. My illness wasn't being fought. It was being managed toward an outcome someone else had already accepted. I learned to stay still. Not asleep. Still. It was the only way people forgot I was listening. That's how I heard them one night. Two voices outside my room. Low. Confident. "He's deteriorating faster than expected," the doctor said. The man replied calmly. "That's acceptable." Acceptable. Have you ever heard your life described like a schedule? "I just want confirmation," the doctor continued. "If he doesn't recover." "He won't," the man said. "Not this time." Footsteps moved away. The door opened. He stood beside my bed, studying the monitors like numbers on a page. Satisfied again. "You don't have to be afraid," he whispered. "Everything is almost over." Almost. That word stayed with me. As my chest tightened and the room dimmed, one final clarity settled in. He wasn't waiting to see if I would die. He was waiting to be told when. So let me ask you. If someone believed your ending was certain, would they still bother pretending to care? Because as darkness closed in, I realized the truth I was never meant to survive long enough to understand. The machine slowed. Everything in the room leaned toward silence. He finally spoke, not to intimidate, not to threaten, but to confess. "You see it now," he said quietly. Nothing was accidental. I listened, heart hammering, body weak but mind sharp. "Your daughter, she wasn't the target," he continued. "She was leverage." Leverage. The word landed like a stone in my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask why. But I could only watch as he spoke, calm and composed, as though this was the natural order of things. "Every step, every decision, every person you trusted." He paused, measuring the weight of his words. "They all led here." I realized then, he wasn't just revealing the past. He was shaping my guilt. Planting it carefully. Making me believe surrender was the only choice. Have you ever had someone whisper the truth so convincingly that it feels heavier than lies? As he straightened and prepared to leave, one thought burned in my mind. If he knew I was listening, would he care that I had already decided to survive? The doctor entered. He checked the monitors with careful precision. Then he turned to the man and nodded. "He's gone," the doctor said, quietly. "Time of death." The words filled the room like a tombstone. The man straightened, shoulders relaxing. A smile crossed his face, quiet, satisfied. "I suppose it's finally over," he said, tucking documents into his folder. He didn't glance back. Then something came into my mind. A question I started asking myself. Was I really dead? Just like that without a fight? Has he really won? Then I recounted some fairy tale about the dead, but nothing aligned. He didn't know I was still listening. I wasn't gone. Not yet. My body had collapsed. My mind had retreated to some fragile corner. But I was alive. He walked away convinced he had won. Every step echoed finality, every movement said closure. Yet behind the silence, something stirred. I lay there, pretending to be still, heart weak but resolute. Listening to the man celebrate a victory that didn't exist. Have you ever realized someone thought they had control? Only to discover the story wasn't theirs to write. That night, as the hospital lights dimmed and monitors hummed, I made a decision. He believed the game was over. He thought the outcome was sealed. But I was far from finished. The room was quiet, almost too quiet. He believed I was gone. The machines hummed softly, carrying the illusion of death. And he had walked away, convinced of his victory. I could hear everything, nurses moving cautiously, monitors beeping, whispers fading into the walls. No one noticed me. No one suspected I was still alive. I tested my breath. Slow. Weak. But alive. I moved my fingers. They responded. Each heartbeat reminded me, survival doesn't always announce itself. I thought about him, the calm, confident predator who thought he controlled everything. He had assumed my body and mind would obey. He had assumed guilt would crush me into submission. But survival has its own momentum. And I realized something dangerous, he hadn't planned for it. He hadn't accounted for the witness he thought was gone. Have you ever been underestimated so completely that it became your secret advantage? That night, I made a quiet promise to myself. He would never see me coming. He would continue believing he had won. And I would use every moment he ignored me to prepare for the day his illusion broke. The next morning, I woke to a body that still ached, but moved. Slowly, painfully, it obeyed me again. Every breath was a reminder, I had been given a reprieve. Not by chance. Not by mercy. By sheer will. I couldn't speak yet. I couldn't move fully. But I could think. And that was enough. I began replaying every word he had said, every moment he had manipulated me. Every advice and every comfort was now a map of his intentions. And I could follow it. He had believed the game was over. He had believed guilt had silenced me. He had believed death had completed his plan. But he was wrong. I started small, testing my strength, listening to conversations, noting patterns. The nurses, the doctors, even the routines he had arranged, all of it. Have you ever realized that surviving the impossible gives you knowledge no one else has? I smiled quietly to myself, knowing he had left with his victory intact, unaware it was already slipping from his hands. And as the room hummed around me, one thought anchored itself. Grace. Just fortunate. The truth hit me in pieces. He hadn't wanted my death for grief, fear, or revenge. He had wanted control. Years ago, I had uncovered one of his fraudulent dealings at work, money siphoned, records altered. I hadn't reported it, not yet, but I knew enough to ruin him. He knew it too. That was why my daughter became a target. Not for who she was, but for what I might do. He wanted me broken, silent, and powerless. Death seemed the easiest path. But survival has allies. She arrived quietly, Marina, one of the night nurses. Her eyes met mine once, and I understood. She would help me stay hidden in plain sight. Through subtle medication adjustments, extra monitoring, and quiet reassurances, she ensured the world believed I was gone. She whispered once. Rest. Let them think you're gone. I'll keep you alive until you're ready. Have you ever realized a stranger's courage can be the difference between life and death? That night, lying in near darkness, I learned two things. The man had underestimated me. I had an ally. And I began planning, quietly, deliberately. Marina became my lifeline. She helped me record conversations, track schedules, and notice small mistakes the man thought were invisible. Every time he overstepped, overcompensated, or repeated instructions, I stored it in memory. Even the staff's whispered frustrations became evidence. I was learning patience, the quiet, invisible kind. I tested my strength in small movements, building my body while observing everything he relied on. He believed his control was perfect, that every decision was absolute. And that arrogance became my weapon. I memorized every document he reviewed, every conversation he had, every excuse he gave to justify my death. It all painted a picture: corruption, manipulation, and intent. The law and the truth are patient, but so am I. Have you ever realized that the smallest details, the ones no one notices, become the most powerful tools? By the time I could fully move again, I had everything I needed. A network of evidence, a witness, and my own survival as proof. He thought he was untouchable. He thought I was gone. I didn't rush. Revenge isn't about anger, it's about precision. Marina guided me through small steps. She would quietly leave reports in my reach, signal moments of opportunity, and redirect attention when the man became suspicious. Every move I made was calculated, every breath deliberate. I rehearsed confrontations in my mind. I imagined the evidence, the emails, the recordings, the inconsistencies he had left behind. And I waited for the right moment. Meanwhile, the man's confidence grew. He believed I was dead, believed victory was his. He didn't notice how carefully I was rebuilding, not just my strength, but my leverage. I had learned something critical: the illusion of control is fragile. Those who believe they are untouchable are the easiest to topple. Have you ever realized that patience is more dangerous than aggression? I smiled quietly that night. He thought I was powerless. He thought I was gone. And yet, I was already planning my move, preparing to strike, not recklessly, but flawlessly. The first strike was subtle. I had Marina arrange a routine check. Documents, emails, and schedules were quietly delivered to the right authorities. Every misstep he had made, the manipulation, the threats, the falsified records, was now undeniable. He didn't know I was alive. He didn't know his web of control had holes. He continued acting like a victor while the truth quietly gathered power around me. I stayed in the shadows, observing as anxiety crept into his behavior. A missed signature here, a repeated instruction there, small cracks that became obvious to anyone paying attention. Every time he boasted, I recorded it in memory, knowing the evidence would speak louder than any argument. Have you ever realized that revenge doesn't always roar? Sometimes it whispers, waits, and then strikes with certainty. That night, I felt strength returning. Marina whispered, "Tomorrow, you begin." I was ready. He was not. And the world would soon see the truth. Survival, patience, and planning always outweigh arrogance. The day arrived. I walked into the office he believed I would never enter again. Alive. Calm. Confident. The staff froze. Even he stopped mid-sentence. "You," he whispered, eyes wide. "I thought you were dead," I finished for him. "I let you believe that, and you forgot one thing: underestimating me was your mistake." I presented the evidence systematically. Emails. Documents. Audio recordings. Witness statements. Every manipulation, every threat, every falsified report laid bare. He tried to argue, to intimidate, but the law and the truth were on my side. He had believed victory was his. Instead, the scales of justice were shifting. Have you ever realized that patience, observation, and careful planning are more powerful than strength or fear? He turned pale, realizing he had counted out someone who had never stopped fighting. And in that moment, I understood a fundamental truth: revenge isn't about destruction, it's about restoring balance. Survival taught me more than revenge ever could. I learned that patience is a weapon. That observation is power. That allies may appear in unexpected forms, like Marina, who risked everything to help me survive. I learned that arrogance blinds the strongest. That control is fragile, and victory is never guaranteed when you underestimate others. I learned that trauma, grief, and near-death moments can forge clarity, resilience, and insight. And I learned the most important thing: revenge is not just about striking, it's about justice and truth. I shared my story, carefully, so others might see the warning signs. Pay attention to those who seek control under the guise of care. Trust your instincts, even when the world seems confident. Small acts of courage, like Marina's, can save lives. Patience and planning are more powerful than panic. Have you ever realized that surviving isn't just living, it's learning, growing, and ultimately reclaiming what's yours? The man was left exposed, powerless, and unable to deny the truth. And I walked away, not just alive, but stronger, wiser, and in control of my story.